Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being with us today. And today we have a very special guest. And what we're going to focus on, and I think we have an unbelievable asset here with us today, is overall, is the next generation of decision makers ready to be leaders? And for this discussion, as I mentioned, I have a very special guest today, Ellen Cooperperson, who is the President and Chief Learning Officer of Cooperperson Performance Consulting and Connected University. And Ellen has a broad perspective from coaching global corporate leaders and to entrepreneurs leading family businesses. Ellen is a best-selling author and a leadership coaching pioneer. Ellen reflects on what leaders of small businesses can learn from how decisions were made over the last 2 years, as we were in an interesting time. And she uses these lessons to raise an all-important question. As the baby boomers retire, is the next generation of decision makers ready to be leaders? So I think we're going to have some fun. So Ellen, I want to thank you for being with me today here, and look forward to hearing your thoughts on this topic.
Well, thank you, Greg. I really appreciate the invitation. It's always great to have these conversations with you. Thank you.
Very good. So let me kick it off by asking a question that I ask all my guests on this. What is your overall assessment of the business climate as it stands today?
Okay. First of all, I do want to say, I really want to acknowledge and appreciate and applaud business leaders. It's humbling what business leaders have done over the last 2 years in leading their organizations through one of the most tumultuous and chaotic and unsettling times in the history of this country. I mean, it's just unbelievable, as well as the teams that have coalesced and come together with no roadmaps to put this all together. Okay. So I want to acknowledge that first before I launch into, what's already happened. And just, kudos, they're still standing. So many have been crushed during the last 2 years. So climate now, first of all, let's take a look at how others responded to all of this chaos. And we've seen it all, all these numbers. I just want to get a foundation for it, right? Addiction rates off the charts, suicide rates off the charts, mental health issues, people stressed and overwhelmed. This is how others responded to it. And we're going to be talking about is the next generation of decision makers ready to lead? A large portion of that data is the 25 to 34-year-olds. Okay, so we're going to take a look at that. Now, I want to say it's critically important to say some of the smartest people I've met in my life, but we're going to get into are they ready? Now, real quick, you asked the question about the overall climate, okay, and what's happened over the last 2 years. So as we say, stressed and overwhelmed, and mostly because of the lockdowns. People point to the pandemic, but the issue is lockdown. Okay,
the prescription to is what you're saying is the medicine worse than the disease?
Exactly, and it's the lockdowns that caused what's going on in the assessment in the organizations right now. Supply chain breakdowns, people not of staff, shortages, isolation, something we're going to have to, it's going to bite us in the butt. We'll talk more about this when we get to trends. But kids who have not had an opportunity to be really educated and learning how to read over the last 2 years, that data is beginning to emerge. And I'm jumping, Rick, but I've had, as you said, I've had the privilege of working in just about every industry. And when I had the opportunity to do a strategic plan for the prison system years ago, how do they determine how many beds they're going to need? They look at the literacy rate
Wow.
of kids up to 10 years old. Okay. And
Wow.
okay, so let's connect the dots. You have 2 years of lockdowns where kids have not had an opportunity to learn how to read, how to communicate. Fast forward. Okay. And this is affecting all communities, So, okay, let's go back. So now we're talking about next generation and what's going to go forward. All right. So where the businesses are now are in recovery from that, from trying to get their footing. What's happened because of the lockdowns too is we have this problem emerging with the Ukraine, with Russia, okay? And because decisions were made, and I'm not going to politicize this conversation, you and I could, but I'm not going to. Decisions that were made to not follow through with us being energy independent. We have dependency on foreign adversaries. And so let's just stop there for a moment. Now, the group that we were most dependent on for oil is Russia. Now they're not our friends anymore. And so what's happened? Prices have begun to go to the pumps, go to the gas pumps. People complaining $4.50 for a gallon, going $5. I heard in another state up to $6. Okay. And so decision makers and leaders, what did the decision makers decide to do about that? The ones who decided that, we're not going to be energy efficient on our own. We're not going to be energy independent. The decision they make is now they're negotiating with Iran, okay? Who was our enemy before, and we're going to let out tariffs. So I don't want to go there. I just want to say, Rick, that the decisions that we make today as leaders, instead of the short term, what's challenging for leaders today is thinking longer term. You and I were talking before we went on about being planners, okay? We gotta look at what's happening and where we're getting our information to be able to make these decisions has to be wide, has to be wide. And I think one of the things that's happening now when you're looking at the environment, what's happening out there, people don't know what to trust. They don't know what to trust. They don't know who to trust. There's been so much lying going on and misinformation, but even the misinformation is misinformation. You follow what I'm saying?
And I think to jump in on that point, I'd like to make an analogy and jump from that point. So you made the point about illiteracy and young children learning how to read. And it almost sparked my imagination of thought of, I know some family friends whose kids have graduated, college in the past couple of years. And instead of the traditional path of a 22 or 23-year-old kid who's illiterate in business, instead of them going into the city and working in an office and having a mentor and the social aspect of being in that office and the training aspect and the knowledge gaining aspect of that, they've spent the first couple of years almost illiterate, working out of their house on a computer, isolated by themselves. And are they getting that same education to be able? So are they the illiterate 2-year-olds? Now they're the business illiterate 23-year-olds that are expected to be the next generation of leaders, and they fall into that 25 to 34 that are addicted and blah, 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 blah. So on and on. So how do these leaders, future leaders, become ready to lead?
Yeah, great question. Okay. So the answer is absolutely. And also, and absolutely, they've been isolated from the kind of education and mentoring that they need. But it's also that, look, I want to say that millennials, I'm going to stand up for millennials. It was millennials who
Mhm.
said, we could work virtually. Why don't we
Right.
do technology in the company? Okay. And it was baby boomers who said, no, 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 no. Okay. So thank God for them. All right. Because when we needed to do it, we could flex on a dime. And the technology and the knowledge they have in general, I'm generalizing, the knowledge they have of technology is phenomenal.
Mhm.
Look, my grandson is 12 years old, 19 years old with autism, can handle the computer better than, than me. So we need to have that. They need to have that knowledge. But we also need to put that together, to your point, with them understanding that they don't know what they don't know,
Mm.
and respect for the wisdom. You and I were talking before. If we don't know the history, we're doomed to repeat it. Okay. So the big issue is, I think that, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and I said, where do you think millennials are getting their information from?
Mm.
Where are they getting their learning from? How are they learning? Social media, he said. And I said, oh my goodness. All right. Because social media is feeding a certain amount of information.
Right.
Okay. But you don't have the depth of it and the history of how we got here and what the fundamental principles are that are going to make you a leader. That's not out there.
So to put it another way, usually decision making is education guided by experience, right? So if experience is history and education is where we take information in from, how we were trained, all those kinds of things. What you're really saying to me is that if history and knowledge are the basis, or experience and education are the basis for decision making and planning going forward, and you're telling me that the history or the experience and the education slash information, social media, is misinformation.
Mhm.
Therefore, if those two key ingredients of the bread have to be in place and they're not, how can the new leaders be ready to jump in and take over?
Brilliant question. Okay. We have to go back to the fundamentals. And the fundamentals are, what is the basis of what built this country in the first place? What were the fundamentals that built our organizations in the first place? And those are based on principles. In order for someone to lead, they have to be worthy of being leaders. And that, in order to follow someone, we have to not only look at, what does the outside trapping look like? Because, looking good has become an art form.
I'm failing that class.
Well, whatever, we do what we can. But the idea is what's on the inside, and that's character. What
Mm.
is the character of the leader? And that's going to show up on the court, on the battlefield. Give an
Mm.
example. One of the groups that I had the privilege of working with, as you know, is the Air National Guard. And I said to the next generation of leaders in the Air National Guard, and this was right before the pandemic, I
Mm.
said, you're going to be out there at some point and you're going to be on your own. And you're going to have to make decisions on the court right there. And there's nobody around for you to ask.
Mm.
What are you going to rely on If you're told to do something that fundamentally is against everything you believe, are you going to do it? Okay, because they ordered me to do it. I mean, that, and we are talking about the military, right?
I'm going to the My Lai massacre, but I'm not going to go there. That's a
No,
different
no,
conversation.
you can think of so many things, Rick. You
Yeah.
can go back to the Holocaust.
Yeah.
So many Nazis who said, oh, I wasn't really, but, you know, I was told I had to exterminate all these people. I mean, you know, there's a point where we have to say, now, you say, you know, one of the things, again, we chatted about is what happened in Canada. I think that's a absolutely great example. Okay, you have truckers who said, I am not taking this vaccine. The government is not telling me that I'm sitting in my truck all by myself and I have to get vaccinated.
Right.
I'm not doing it. Okay. And so they went on a peaceful protest and they were shut down. Their money was taken away. If you sent them $10, that was taken away. If you owned the truck that they drove, we take that away. We're going to take your money away, your livelihood away, if you don't follow orders. And I am of the beliefs at some point, we have to decide as a leader,
Yeah.
what am I a stand for? What hill am I willing to die on? Now, I don't want to get too dramatic about it. The idea as a leader of an organization, there are leaders who've had to make some very hard, difficult decisions that weren't popular. There's no playbook. So to your point, what do they go to? I say it's real easy. And again, you know, you and I chatted about this before. Take a look at the dollar. The answer is right there, right? It's right there.
So expand upon that. So take a look at the dollar, right? So just kind of give further insight into that.
Okay. E pluribus unum. Okay. Unity. Diversity is a wonderful thing. This country was built on diversity. And for a business owner and a leader, of course we want diverse opinions, but do it respectfully, right?
Yeah.
You know, one of my favorites, say what you mean, just don't be mean, okay? Don't shut each other down. Don't say, regardless of a person's background, class, race, gender, I don't care. Oh, we're only going to listen to this one because, you know, they are, you know, the queen for the day or the king for the day. No, good ideas are good ideas. Dumb ideas are dumb ideas. I don't care who they come from, okay? But as a leader, we have to be willing to go against the grain and say, I don't care if 20,000 people are saying something stupid. It's still stupid. It's not going to work. Okay.
Right.
Now, how would you and I know that, right? I've been around for, you know, like 7 decades already plus. So how do I know certain things are going to work and not going to work? Because I've seen them tested. I've tried them myself. They don't work. So unless we have the respect for the wisdom of the ages, right? So e pluribus unum, we're talking about also liberty, the pursuit of happiness, right? Equality, they're right there on our money. The founders of this country, and I'll just add this, I see you have something you want to say. The founders of this country, so brilliant. And this nonsense, I mean, yeah, context and time to only look at the fact that there was slavery. Slavery goes back, I'm Jewish. It goes back, you know, my people were slaves, okay, in Egypt. I have a heart for it. It's made me, you know, a big part of who I am, make the world a better place, all of that. But the idea is the founders of this country made a decision to sign a declaration and create a union and a republic, knowing that right outside the door was big guns who wanted to disembowel them. as soon as they opened the door. And they said, we know from our history, because we came from Europe, the things that human beings will do if they have too much absolute power. If human beings have too much absolute power, it will corrupt them. So we have things that were put into place to make that stop. And so we have to do that in our own organizations. I'm very excited. So you stop me. What's the
I think everything that I'm hearing from you comes back to two words in my mind right now. Education guided by experience. And at every level, particularly in these past couple of years, and as we're talking about building the next generation, the succession, we are ignoring or erasing that education or that history, right? The history guide, the experience. But more importantly, what I hear you say, just as you use those kindergartners not learning how to read, we've taken those 25 years old and 30-year-olds and have distracted them enough, have locked them away enough that they're business illiterate. Therefore, the ramification in 3 to 5 to 7 years, as the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s somethings start to retire, business leaders who we make up 50% of the workforce, or account for 50% of the workforce, there's a big potential hole. So how are your prospects and clients, colleagues, preparing their succession plan with the basis of knowing that the next generation might not be ready to lead?
Brilliant question. So what you're pointing to, yes, they need to be educated. The big question is, who's educating them? And what are the values and the principles of the educators? Okay, let's talk about for just a second, and then I want to really zero in on your question. If the education is going on in a university, and the university tells them, oh, this is a terrible place to live, the United States, we're just a terrible, whatever, they're going to come out. If there isn't some balance of that, they're going to come out believing that some of the decisions that are making now, okay, I got to do a play, Iran wants to blow Israel off the State of the Union of the world. Okay, so the educators have to be the leaders who have the right knowledge. So what's happening with your question is, what are they doing to prepare in the companies that I'm working with? Number one, we have to be very clear what the values are of the existing leader or founder of the organization, because what they're looking at, what they want, and I do a lot of work with family businesses, as you know, is preserve the wealth, preserve the family, and preserve the legacy. So one of the things, yeah, go ahead.
Can I just ask, so that's what the leaders want: preserve the wealth, preserve the family, preserve the legacy. That's let's call it the person running the company now, right?
Okay.
Which that sounds like those three values are rooted in education guided by experience.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
So I'm sorry I interrupted. So now how do we?
I appreciate being, stay on the guardrails here because we don't have days which you and I can spend together. So what is the education that they need? The education that they need to preserve all of this is, how do you preserve wealth? How do we preserve the family? And what is the legacy we want to preserve? It's not so much, I want a statue for me,
right,
in the park,
right, for the birds to sit on,
birds or whatever on. it's really, what do we mean by legacy? What are we leaving behind? Okay.
Mm.
And what they want to leave behind is this path that you and I have been talking about. What are the fundamental principles and values that need to be moved forward? Now, I'll give you a very great example of this. You might remember years and years ago, I think it was in the 70s, the Tylenol scare. Do you remember that,
Yeah,
Ray?
I was a young buck at that point in time, but I do recall it. Yep.
So Johnson and Johnson, the Tylenol was on the shelves, and there were a couple of bottles that were discovered that were tainted, had poison in them. Okay. Johnson and Johnson board. Now, I really appreciate this, that someone in my own organization was also on the board of Johnson and Johnson at the
Wow.
time. So we had an opportunity to find out how they made the decision about that they made. Remember, if you remember the time, nobody insisted that they remove the Tylenol. It only happened in one. But Johnson and Johnson decided to remove all Tylenol from all shelves
Wow.
across the globe, wherever it existed. I mean, we couldn't even imagine at this point what the cost is if you try to translate in dollars.
Right.
Okay. So the person that worked in my organization, I said, how did they make this phenomenal decision? They said they went back to their value statement.
Mm.
The health and safety of our customers
Wow.
comes first.
Wow. That's it.
That is leadership. Now,
Wow.
if you look at, fast forward, I said this happened right in the 70s. Here we are, 2022. Johnson and Johnson is still a valued name in the market.
Wow.
People
Amazing.
know they can trust the brand. You can't buy that.
Wow.
So a leadership, but what we have today is we have what I call false idols, false gods, okay? And the false god is money, power, prestige. I mean, I can go on and on. Nice house, life is good, I look
Right.
good, all of that nonsense. Making a decision that is going to cost us up front, but is going to help us in the long run.
Yeah.
So companies I work with are investing in training them, in coaching them, dare I say, with the right coaches and
Yes.
educators. But
That comes at the end of the program.
yeah, whatever. The holding them accountable. I just talked to someone I'm coaching now who's, really up and coming millennial, absolutely is in the press all of the time. And he was talking about procrastinating, that he's got a gazillion proposals that he's promised to this. We've all been there, right? And he's way behind. And I said, this is an issue of integrity. Is it back up? I said, did you promise people that these things would be done? Yes. Well, by when? Sunday. How many you got? 10. 10 proposals by Sunday. This is about integrity. And integrity means you gave your word, you made a promise, you follow through. So
Right.
guess what you're doing between now and Sunday? So let's go through how you're going to get it done. No whining, no complaining. We're going to get it done so you can be in integrity. And he backed up and he said, I never thought about it that way. I said, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking of what comes up in us human beings, which is, I don't feel like it. And this is where the whole feelings comes in. Who cares? I said to him, oh, you don't feel like it.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I said, I'll tell you what my dad used to say. Oh, Ellen doesn't Yeah, like,
And I'm sure that got a reaction. So with that said, I think in those two examples, and then I want to transition to the future. In those two examples, the Johnson and Johnson and this gentleman you're coaching in integrity, what you really went back to is the historical foundation of their endeavors, right? And they use that, right, educate that experience, that history, and use that to make decisions through, to move forward. So I think education guided by experience now is really what we're talking about, the root of all these causes for either really good succession plans or really poor succession plans because people don't have the tools.
if you say, if you have a young person who says, "Oh, I know," just think about adolescents, right? "Oh, I know, I can handle it myself."
I have three of them right now. I know exactly what you're talking
You have
about.
teenagers, you know exactly. It's our self-will, and we got to have, and this is another principle, humility, to be able to say, "I don't know. I don't know how to do this. I need help. I need your wisdom. Tell me what you think," but also not to swallow whole, chew on it. You know that expression. You want to lead, read. And if you're going to listen to social media and news, listen to this one, listen to that one, and chew on it, right? Go to educated, wisdom-based teachers. I saw somebody recently advertising themselves. You mentioned, a leader in coming up with coaching in the first place. But today there's, I don't know, like 700,000 of them out there. And just the other day, I saw someone who's 25 years old advertising themselves as a life coach. And it's like, to 11-year-old.
Right.
I don't want to generalize. It's very, very smart people, but putting those two things together. Now, I just want to say one other thing, Rick, as we move to the future and so forth. So one of the things that I'm doing with these companies, yes, we have to look at the tribal knowledge of the people who have been in the organization for a very long time, because those folks are retiring in mass also. People who have 40 years in an organization. I have one family business where two of their top leaders who have been with the company for 32 and 40 years just gave notice.
Wow.
Okay. All right. Head of sales, head of operations, we're done. Okay. And I'm giving you 6 months, which is really very nice. Some don't do that. And what we have to do is get all that tribal knowledge digitalized in some form, to take a look at the processes that are going on. How are we going to train their replacements? And we have to look at, do those processes make sense?
Yes.
Are we just going to replace these two, head leaders who've been around for 30, 40 years with just two more, and we're going to go out and recruit that again? Or do we break this up and make something different here? And how are we going to train people if we don't document what's going on here and what the tribal knowledge is? I see you want to say something.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I'm seeing this trend throughout this conversation: education, experience, history, knowledge, right? That sort of thing. Tribal knowledge, right, is really the culmination, in my mind, of history. Those people have 72 years between them. There's a lot of history there that we need to understand, right? And then that other side of that tribal knowledge is education, knowledge, so that these next leaders, if they take that, package it properly, those next leaders can take that and have the history and education, the experience and the knowledge to make great decisions going forward. If they don't, start the playbook all over again.
Exactly. And repeat what's going on.
Repeat mistakes.
Mistakes and
Right.
figure it out myself. And so part of that process is leaving enough time for the existing person in that position to mentor, and setting up a mentorship program so that
Mm,
they can turn this wisdom over. Because, yeah, it's great if we digitalize and we do the processes and we do the well. And, we've got people on our team who do that really, really well. You need the existing person in the job to explain what's of this, what's of that, what are the nuances of all of this, the what if it happens this way, that way, and then be on the court with them. You understand that, President? Be the coach on the court, not the one that jumps in and does it for them, but
mm.
being a coaching leader. See, a coach doesn't run out on second base and push the person off the plate and say, oh, I used to do it better than you, so let me play second base. Well, no, let them make mistakes, be there, coach them, help them, right? The
Yeah.
other, the other phenomenon that's going on, and again, with family businesses with myself, is like, how do you pass the values on, the legacy part?
Mm.
And I have a lot of siblings that are in family businesses, and one sibling has become the president, and another sibling is the head of marketing. And then, the parents are talking about shares. And I get a call that says, we want to be able to have peace at the dinner table. So how do I tell the one who's the head of marketing that they're not getting as much as the one that I have anointed as president, because they've been having fights since they're kids about, I love this one better than that one.
And whose spouses will now not go to Thanksgiving at that one's house because I hate
Right,
them.
and your parents are doing this and that. And
Right.
so what I've come up with, Rick, I just want to share this with you as a solution to this, is that I'm looking at and working with them now in setting up family foundations,
Mm,
because they're already doing charitable giving, a lot of these companies. And I say, let's take a look as a family, everybody over 16 years old, come to the table and let's share what are the values that made our company strong, that's made our family strong, that we really believe in. And watch this, we have the president of the company, but the head of marketing becomes the head of the family foundation.
wow. That's a great solution, and amazing. And Ellen, I really want to thank you, because I think where we went in this past bit of time, we went back in history. You took us to the present, and you took us to the future, all in a short period of time, which I think gives the people that are listening to this the ability to see that the the the, the fundamentals of decision making and leading are not absent of what happened back then, what is happening today, and how to attack that, and what is going to happen in the future, and how to prepare for those things. So I really I want to thank. I think we could do 12 more of these episodes, and if not 24 more, or an infinite number, because I truly appreciate what you've done. I know what you've done for my business, and I highly recommend that anyone who's listened to this, who's struggling with what does the next generation of leaders look like, and how do we build them, as well as other business issues that touch the family, like why can't everyone get along, and how do we do it better, and how does my behavior affect employees, and a whole host of things, absolutely must talk to Ellen Cooperperson. So she, again, is the president and chief learning officer of Cooperperson Performance Consulting, Inc. and Connect University. So we'll dive into Connect University on a subsequent conversation. But the best way to reach her by phone is 631 300 0009. Again, that's 631 300 0009. Right. And she has a couple of websites. One is www.cooperperson, all one word.com, Cooperperson, all one word.com. And the other one is www.connectcpc.com, Connect CPC, as in cooperpersonperformanceconsulting.com. So Ellen, again, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. Thank you so much for being generous with your mind. And thank you for all that you do for small businesses like ours.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you for being here, inviting me, and it's my privilege. Thanks so much.
Thank you. So thank you. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.